Good afternoon and welcome to Good Works. My name is Chris Kerr with the Ignatian Solidarity Network. For over 15 years, the Ignatian Solidarity Network has been uniting the Ignatian family, meaning the Jesuit network, as well as those who are inspired to work for justice through the spiritual tradition of St. Ignatius of Loyola, to build a more just world through faith-based social justice formation, education, and advocacy. If you haven't already, please check out our website, ignatiansolidarity.net, and like and follow us on social media to get the latest advocacy alerts, educational resources, and much more. Good Works, responding to COVID-19, features partners from the Ignatian family working diligently to support the needs of community members through direct service, accompaniment, and advocacy in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Joining us today from Sacred Heart Parish in El Paso, Texas, located just a few blocks from the U.S.-Mexico border, are James Martinez and Jesuit fathers Stephen Pitts and Tim McMahon. Our guests will share the ways the parish is walking with parishioners in the community as they navigate the COVID-19 pandemic, including the efforts of the parish's Despensa and La Tilma projects. So welcome, James and Fathers Tim and Stephen. We're glad to have you with us. Father Tim, why don't we start out with you? Can you give us a little bit of an overview of the parish and talk a little bit about, what things, looked like leading into the pandemic and then where things are now, and then maybe we can jump into more of the specific work.
Sure. As you said, I'm relatively new to the parish, but the parish is not new. As you said, we're located just a couple of blocks from the U.S.-Mexico border and crossing for Juarez, which is in ordinary times, is a very heavily crossing point back and forth. There's one city here, El Paso and Juarez, with a big border wall running down the middle of it. But for the wall, you wouldn't be able to see where one starts and the other begins. But we're located about 2 blocks from there, and we're located in what's called the Segundo Barrio of El Paso. We're just south of downtown. We're actually right between downtown and the border. Sacred Heart Parish, Sagrado Corazon, is the oldest parish in El Paso. It was founded a little over 125 years ago by Father Pinto, who founded a great number of churches, the original churches in El Paso. They were Italian missionaries who'd come up through Mexico, and I believe they came through Mexico. We also, our zip code, which includes all of our parish, is one of the poorest zip codes in the entire United States. There's a great deal of poverty in this part of the city, and also a lack of resources, public resources, like any neighborhood in a big American city that is live where a lot of low-income people live. You don't have those resources available as well. We also have a very high illiteracy rate and a very low rate of high school completions. Very few people, lower numbers of people in the neighborhood have a high school diploma. So the parish, having been here for a while, in addition to the church, we have just to the side of the church is the old grade school building, which was called the Centro Pastoral, which is now where we run our social programs from. The director, Jaime Garcia, oversees several programs there. We have, in ordinary times, we have a very large adult education program, which meets, as I've mentioned, the very high lack of education in the neighborhood. So ordinarily, we have to suspend it during this crisis. But we provide courses in basic literacy, GED. We also Jaime works with the Consulate of Mexico to provide the equivalence of what would be equivalent of the GED for the Mexican school system for people who began school in Mexico and were not able to complete it. We offer computer classes and citizenship classes, both in English and Spanish. The language of the parish, I should mention, is mainly Spanish. All of our masses are celebrated in Spanish, except for one bilingual mass on Sunday. So a lot of our social services also are based in Spanish as well, taught in Spanish and or are bilingual. So that's a big part. Now that program has been temporarily suspended. We've always had on Fridays every week a food dispenser that serves between 80 and 100 families every Friday. And in addition to that, we have a very active and very strong Vincent de Paul Society. So on Fridays, when people are coming for their food help, the ladies ordinarily in the Vincent de Paul Society meet with them, and they can assist with rent and utilities and some other things. They usually would take the information and then go visit people in their homes. We're no longer visiting people in our homes, but I'm still available on Friday to meet with people if they're in need of, right now it's mainly rent that would come up. And then we do the food dispenser as well. There's also a project that is not meeting right now also to help Project Gabriel, which helps women in crisis pregnancies, but because of the contact limitations, they're not able to meet now either. So I'll let Stephen and James talk more about what we've changed with the crisis here, but that's kind of an overview of the parish.
Thanks, Father. Why don't we turn it over to Stephen and James to share a little bit. James has got with him some of the crew too, the crew that putting together meals. So James, why don't we turn it over to you and then maybe to Father Stephen.
Did you want me to go first?
Go ahead, James. Yeah.
Okay. So my name is James Martinez. I actually run the La Tilma, which is the name of the restaurant at the parish. Behind me is Amelia, and then we actually have a volunteer, a Maryknoll volunteer. Your name is Corralis. So like Father said, every Friday we actually prepare. We got this really awesome grant that so we can prepare 400 meals for 100 families on Fridays. And we actually also get to feed the people or the ladies at Villa Maria. There's 14 of them. We also feed the priests, the Jesuit priests. There's 5 of those. And we always have enough food to actually feed the people around the neighborhood. And I also take some food over to Opportunity Center on Saturdays and Sundays.
And James, what have been some of the challenges of offering people meals during this time of the pandemic?
Well, there really hasn't been a challenge. I mean, other than we're doing what we've been doing so far. The only thing that's happened is, the having to stay 6 feet apart. The fact that we really can't talk to people the way we used to before. People used to actually come up to the door. We'd open the door. They'd come in. We have to keep that distance. But other than that, thank God, I don't really see a big difference other than we can't relate to people face to face. But as far as people coming forward with monies, these organizations actually putting out these grants for us, people just giving of themselves, of monies, of their time, that really hasn't changed, and that's a blessing for all of us here.
What are some of the ways that people respond to what you're able to provide, especially like now where maybe it's a little bit harder to communicate or you can't shake hands or things like that? How do people show their gratitude, and also how do you still? You said it's different in that way. How do you show that you care beyond just that meal when no one can see the smile on your face or things like that?
It's been of course texting. In addition to people coming over, the people who do have access to a phone, they'll text us and say, "Thank you very much." They'll always bless us before they leave. They do, of course, just waving. A lot of things that we actually did before. We don't hug, but we actually show the sign of a hug. A lot of people will come over afterwards. They'll stay their distance, but we'll talk to them. And like Amelia here, and again, this volunteer from Maryknoll, we still have people coming in and wanting to help, and we actually provide that service. So we have a big enough kitchen. I think I'm just going to quickly show you what we have. So this is our kitchen. It's actually pretty big. We also have, this used to be, or is actually, our space for when we serve the people.
Oh wow, see it. Nice, yeah.
Well, anyway, it's a huge gym, and it seats about 350 people. We could actually do the social distancing really well, but I'm not really sure that we want to do that right now. So we're focusing on just, again, getting grants. Again, people are feeling really generous, getting these food to the people that need them, and then hopefully continue just doing that for as long as we need it.
Sure. And you talked about the community being really generous. Are there any examples that stick out for you in terms of ways the community's been able to support the project and the good work that's happening there?
You know, every single family that's actually given monies, or individuals, that they never want to say, oh no, I don't want to be singled out by name. So I just want to make a shout out to everybody who's actually either friends of family, the Jesuit community, people who are benefactors to the Jesuit community as well. We actually just right now, we received like about 100 loaves of 10 pounds of ham. And for when if we were to give that to a person or family, they really couldn't use it. So we actually had one of our benefactors, she has a restaurant. She was able to slice all the hams, and then we're going to package them to give them out to families.
Wow, that's impressive. And James,
Yeah.
I've been to Sacred Heart, and I've actually had a chance to enjoy a meal that you've created. Can you give us what's on the menu for today? What are folks going to enjoy today?
Oh, well, yeah, I'm glad you asked. So for this Friday, we're going to be doing Mexican style chili beans with ground beef, because we had some hot dogs that were donated. So we're going to use those. We're going to buy the bread, and then we're going to make, in addition, we're going to make these really beautiful salads. Let me show you. I know. Let me see. Can you see? Let me see.
Almost. Oh yeah.
Levanta.
Oh.
So anyway, so what we want to do when we wrote the grant, we let them know that in addition to providing meals to these people, that we do want to make sure that we provide a healthy option as well, always. So we'll always include a salad. Again, tomorrow, or Friday's going to be this beautiful fruit salad, and we'll just keep on going.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the healthy option is important, and and just being, especially if people are more cooped up, eating healthy, if they're out less and things like that is really important. So that's wonderful. Let's turn it over now to Father Stephen, and you can tell us a little bit about the despensa. And I actually understand, Father Stephen, this was a work of the parish that you weren't that familiar with maybe until more recently. Can you tell us a little bit about your own kind of story with the despensa?
Yeah, I knew of the existence of the despensa, but before the pandemic, I was the religious ed director, and Friday was the one day I didn't have to go into the office. So if I wanted to sneak over there and get something, I just know that there were these mobs of people and these huge crowds of volunteers, and there was this very organized machinery operating whereby people got fed, but I really didn't know anything about. But, since the quarantine, the religious ed program, we're still continuing to reach out to families over the phone, and we've created a lot of videos with our social media presence, and lately we've been doing classes over Zoom. But I sort of found myself with a lot of time on my hands, and then many of the usual volunteers who had come from the community to help with the despensa are older people, vulnerable people who really should be staying home, and we were worried about cross-contamination. So myself and a couple of the other parish employees, we started helping out with the despensa. And a long time ago, I studied engineering, so the whole thing has become this logistics problem. Now, on Wednesdays, we go to the massive El Pasoans Fighting Hunger food pantry, where there's a mile-long line of cars and there's police protection. And it's really it just shows you, a sign of how many people are really suffering because of the economic effects of the coronavirus. But we're grateful for their partnership, because they let us come in the back and they give us pallets of food. A pallet of onions, a pallet of potatoes, as James mentioned, a pallet of ham, a pallet of bacon. And it's kind of like one of those cooking shows. You never know quite what you're going to get, but you always say yes, because who knows what's going to be available the following week. So then on Wednesday, we bring the pallets back. On Thursdays, we're putting together, with a very select group of volunteers, we're putting together 2 bags. I think we give the best despensa in El Paso. We have a bag of staples with rice and beans and canned goods and some meat. And then we have a bag of fruit and vegetables. And what we don't get donated from the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank, we have a couple of local partners in the community. One of our parishioners is the owner of Economy Cash and Carry, a grocery store distributor. And so he's been supporting us. And then down the street, we get a lot of our produce from Matas, who's an institution in this community. So we put together 90 bags. And the whole process of putting together, it's very tangible. I think like many people, I kind of feel powerless because our instinct is to want to be with our people, and our instinct is to serve our people. And especially with the community we serve, that's the one thing we shouldn't be doing because of the danger of transmitting the virus. I feel like it's something very tangible. What we can do is we can put together 90 bags, and then we came up with this way to balance. On the one hand, there's more need now than ever, as Father Tim mentioned. I mean, the people in our zip code are particularly vulnerable. A lot of them are day laborers, or maybe they work in the informal economy. So they have needs, and we can't ignore their needs, but then we have to be safe and model practicing these public health guidelines. So we came up with a system where we give the dispenser, we have a plaza, and so we give it outside. And so we're able to put it on 3 chairs, and we back up, and the people come, and they take the dispenser, and they continue to go. And as James said, they're so grateful to see us. They're so grateful and gracious for whatever we give them. And they assure us of our prayers, or sometimes they give us their offerings. I mean, $5 or $10 in an envelope. And you know that these people on a normal week are counting every penny. But I mean, a lady told me, no, as soon as my check comes, or as soon as I ever get anything, I always set aside a little bit first for the church. And they count on our prayers. And there's just a sense in this community. Someone told me about a year ago that as a church, when you invest in the community feels that, and the community supports you. And for me, it's been very moving, both as James mentioned, all of our partners in the parish who want to support our work, but then also the beating heart of this community, sensing that we're with them in this very difficult time.
Thanks, Father Stephen. And for anyone that wants to respond, are there ways that you think that as you've responded to this crisis, things that you've learned that might inform how your ministries are impacted moving forward? Is there anything that we can think, knowing what you know now, it'll have an effect on the way you try to serve or support people farther down the road as we work our way through this pandemic?
I mean, that's the joke, is we've all become experts in Zoom. I think that we discovered some of the benefits of social media, and it's encouraged us because we have the time. I mean, you know, we've turned a little video production studio and run Zoom classes and Zoom webinars and things like that. So that's something I'd like to continue. But I mean, what we're starting to see about this economic recovery, just as it impacted the poor more, because the people in our zip code are the sort of people who can't telework. You know, they're the sort of people, they had a precarious existence to begin with. And then, you know, I think it's showing us that it's not a matter of weeks, it's really a matter of months or years.
Yeah. And
just the importance of this constant accompaniment. And it doesn't seem like much, 2 bags of groceries, and as James says, a really nice, nutritious meal. But it makes a real difference in their lives. And I always, when we're handing it out, I kind of look and I say, could I live for 2 weeks on this? So to me, it's brought me much more closely to the tangible needs and the tangible situations of the people that we serve. And that's something I'd like to continue moving forward, to always have a sense of kind of their gritty day-to-day reality and their challenges, but also their joys and their wonderful spirit.
Sure. How about for you, James?
I think the restaurant industry is going to evolve. It's not going to be what we used to do before. Even in the next couple of months, it's never going to go back to the way it was before. So one of the things that I'm thinking is I enjoy what I'm doing right now. I've always enjoyed, you know, just actually helping people. So just quickly, for when I was here, we had a Thanksgiving dinner. We put together a Thanksgiving dinner every year. The last time I was here, we served over 3,000 people with volunteers. Everything was donated. We had waiters and wait staff greeting people at the door, bringing them to the linen covered tables. So one of the things that I'm thinking is maybe this kitchen that we have here at the parish, and I haven't talked to Father Tim, of course, but one of the things we might consider is basically doing something like we're doing right now. Keep this going for as long as we need to, and even after we need to, so that we can actually help this community, get people more involved, make them realize that they can donate their time and their monies and their efforts and really help the people that need to be helped out.
And there's no better place to propose an idea than on live video. Good job there. That was smart. Father Tim and Father Stephen, I was thinking a lot as you were speaking about the Jesuits' universal apostolic preferences, these kind of universal commitments throughout the world of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, one of them being walking with the excluded. And it seems that this crisis is highlighting the excluded in more significant ways, in more profound ways, and maybe even, forcing more people into that. Well, we don't like to create divisions in the world, into that kind of zone of exclusion. Can you talk at all about how you see the work of the parish amidst this crisis, kind of responding to the call of the preferences, or a broader call of the society worldwide?
I think, even before the crisis, I think that really is the mission of the parish, is the reason we're here in this parish is not just historical. It's precisely because the society and the province wants to accompany the people on the margins, and we are literally on the margin. I mean,
So I apologize, but I'm going to be losing my connection.
Sorry. So I think what the crisis highlights is that what a number of commentators and news media and other educational works have mentioned, this has really highlighted the divide in our country between the have and have-nots. And my hope is that maybe one good thing that could come out of this is conscience of making people more conscious of that, and maybe making some changes as we move forward years from now as a country.
Thanks, Father Tim. Father Stephen, I don't know if you want to share anything else with that along those lines.
Yeah, because one of the things we talked about early on as a Jesuit community is how we could respond. Because the hard thing is, in our history, there are these famous Jesuit saints that responded to the plague, like Aloysius Gonzaga and others. The public health wasn't advanced then, and some of them ended up infecting more people than they actually served. So we could follow that example. But I think one of the things I was really felt is that as a community and then as a parish staff, we've sat and we've discerned and we've been creative. And that's something that's characteristic of the Jesuit way of proceeding, is to be very in touch with the signs of the times and to let ourselves be moved and to trust the best resources, which include public health and economic experts, but at the same time to trust that God is showing us a way forward to do something different. I never expected 2 months ago that we would be, running this dispensa in this particular way. And it's been kind of nice because it's kind of shaken us all out of our comfort zones and invited us to pray and reflect. And it's that kind of creativity that we always need in the church to move forward. Another thing too, as we've celebrated Mass every day, we've been hearing the story of the early church in Acts. And I remember something one of my Jesuit brothers said a couple of weeks ago. He said, the gospel always moves by its own power. The gospel always moves by its own power. And that even in the midst of this crisis, the gospel is continuing to move and invite us to serve the Lord, especially in the margins. That's something that gives me a lot of hope.
Thank you for that. That was beautiful. Well, we're so grateful that you, Father Tim and Father Stephen and James were able to join us. We know James had to get back to the kitchen, so we let him go. But we're so grateful for your time today and your continued ministry of walking with people there in El Paso. And we wish you the best of luck in that ministry and that continued work. So thank you again for being with us for this episode of Good Works. And I just want to say to those who've been watching today, we're grateful to have you with us. And I know there's folks from Sacred Heart and all over the country who joined us. So thank you for that. We'd also like to invite you to be part of the Ignatian Solidarity Network's efforts to advocate for a more just world. So to all those watching, you can join us in calling on Congress to ensure the protection of those most in need amid the COVID-19 crisis, including asking our elected officials for measures to improve the economic security of the most vulnerable and address unique health risks posed to people in our prisons, to migrants, to low-income communities, as well as communities of color, which already bear the burden of poor environmental and health conditions in our society. You can take action right now by texting COVID, that's COVID, to 202-800-1541. I also want to let you know about a couple upcoming ISN broadcasts that are happening in the next week or so. On May 24th marks the 5th anniversary of Laudato Si, Pope Francis's encyclical on care for creation. You can join the Ignatian Carbon Challenge along with the global Catholic community from May 16th to 24th. That's happening right now, and celebrating 5 years of better caring for creation and envisioning a hopeful future. Activities include Laudato Si discussion groups, social media bingo, and a global prayer service. And you can find more information about this at igsol.net/LSweek. And then finally, you can actually learn what young activists are doing. We'll have another live broadcast just like this called The Climate is Changing, So Why Aren't We? Perspectives on Environmental Activism. And it's going to take place on May 26th at 3 p.m. And we'll have young people speaking about their work on the front lines of environmental justice and how you can stand in solidarity with them. And finally, next week on Wednesday night, we'll have our regular Solidarity on Tap, which is a chance to gather for hospitality, fellowship, and social justice sustenance, all virtually right now anyway. We'll be welcoming Olga Segura, who's a freelance writer on race and culture. She wrote for a number of years for America Media, the Jesuit magazine. And you can also see we have some Solidarity on Tap dates for the summer in addition. If you like today's conversation and want to share it or watch it again, don't worry, we've got you covered. This broadcast, as well as all of our previous live broadcasts, are available on YouTube and Facebook, so make sure to check those out. And again, we want to thank you so much for being with us today, for joining us to learn about the good work happening at Sacred Heart Parish in El Paso, Texas. Thank you and have a great day.